Ken Trahan along with Lenny Vangilder. It's our First NBC Bank Weekend Review, brought to you by First NBC Bank with 32 locations throughout the greater New Orleans area and beyond. That's First NBC Bank, proud sponsor of SportsNola.com. It was a Black Sunday for the New Orleans Saints, who got whipped in pretty much every phase as they got defeated 27-10 by the Cincinnati Bengals in the Mercedes-Benz Superdome. And Lenny, this game kind of turned on a couple of plays. First, a 17-play drive, and you don't get into the end zone and get no points. And then, of course, right before the half, Cincinnati's trying to run out the clock. And they just run the ball up the middle and gain 62 yards, Jeremy Hill no less, and they sets up a field goal. So basically you're talking about a 6 to 10-point swing there with those two plays, and that was pretty much it.
Yeah, certainly. You feel like you have to get in. You know what's amazing to me, and this is just one of those stats. You know, we're stats people. But explain this one to me with the offensive ability of the Saints over the last 9 years. And we touched on this last year when it happened. Brian Alley Walsh actually wrote in depth about it at SportsNola.com last year, the last time it happened. 4th and goal at the 1 in the Sean Payton, Drew Brees era. The Saints are now 1 for 8 in converting. Because I don't know why. I mean, they've done a little bit of everything. They've run running backs. They've tried to throw the ball to Jamar Nesbitt. They've tried to throw the ball to fullbacks who have no idea who their name is. You know, yesterday they threw it to Eric Lorig. I don't know. You would think, especially with a guy like Jimmy Graham, okay, or a guy like Marcus Colston, who are big inviting targets, who have not seen, by the way, any of those 4th and goal at the 1 plays. But you'd think, okay, let's take a shot here and do something like that. But the bottom line is now the Saints are 1 out of 8. Since 2006, running 4th and goal at the 1. So that was one play, and then obviously you mentioned, that was a huge – it was only 3 points, but it was a huge momentum swing going into halftime. At least you're going to go into half at a one-score game otherwise, and that just seemed to take the air out of everything at that point. That run, and, he got down right at 1 second left. He knew if they would have missed one more tackle and, tackled him at the 10-yard line, the half would have run out. But tackled him with 1 second left. Bengals able to call timeout, kick the field goal, to go in 13-3 at half.
Yeah, it's remarkable timing when you think about it. They were just trying to run the clock out, and they couldn't stop a simple dive play, essentially. And when you can't do that, you can't win. 9 of 13 on 3rd down were the Bengals, and one of those was meaningless toward the end of the game. So Saints couldn't get off the field. Keenan Lewis, game he tried to play, couldn't have been more than 70%, and they're just not very good at the other cornerback positions anywhere. And now the safety position is severely depleted the rest of the way, so something really bad got a lot worse, the secondary.
It did, and I would be concerned about the offensive line as well. I mean, anytime you're dealing with a concussion, and Zach Strief with a concussion, Strief has been, I would say, maligned is a proper word throughout his career, but he's been a steady guy in there, and I think there's a big drop-off when he's in the game and when you put Bryce Harris in the game at tackle. So it's now, if you got a week to get somebody else ready, that could be a different story, but still in all, this team is not the deepest team in the world, and that you can blame that a lot on some of the higher-end salaries that don't allow you to have better backups, but at the end of the day, when you do have injuries and you don't have, if you want to call them adequate replacements, you're going to, be in trouble when you do have these injuries.
And injuries have been part of the equation. The Saints have been bit by the injury bug in severe fashion, and obviously, as Lenny alludes to, they don't have the depth to support going forward. Next up, Baltimore. Sean Payton's never beaten them as a head coach of the New Orleans Saints, so it's going to be interesting to see if they can change that equation on Monday Night Football, no less. Of course, it wasn't any better for the LSU Tigers. They got shut out by Arkansas on the road. First SEC win under Brett Bielema for the Razorbacks, and this offense was just very, very difficult to watch again. And LSU does not have an SEC quarterback, and it's obvious as can be. And we've been saying it. This isn't a second guess, Lenny. This is pretty much what we've been saying.
It's discouraging to see, what we've seen from the quarterback position, and really not seeing any progress. You'd hope some of these guys, they've made some significant improvements along the way this season. Defense has improved, offensive line has improved. You've had some improvements in some major areas on this football team. Quarterback really isn't one of them. And what you saw on Saturday night in Fayetteville, barely 100 yards of total offense. It just, it was not pretty to watch by any means. And this is an LSU team now at 7-4 with a game at A&M remaining on Thanksgiving night. They'll either be an 8-4 or a 7-5 team. going to a Midland Bowl somewhere, and that's certainly not the standard of expectation we've come to expect out of Baton Rouge in the last decade and a half.
Yeah, Jennings is not good enough. In defense of him, though, it looked as though LSU had acted like they'd never seen a blitz before. I mean, clearly he was running for his life half the time, and clearly the receivers aren't what they need to be, and clearly their offensive line didn't protect well enough. So it's a combination of things. Their defense played well enough. They gave them a chance in the game, but obviously their offense did nothing. Where Tulane was concerned, it was back to the previous Tulane that we'd seen, not the one we saw in Houston, which had to be an aberration, because here at home for homecoming to spit the bit like they did was not only discouraging, but kind of head-scratching in retrospect.
Well, I think I would say this about Tulane. You're dealing with a very young football team, and we've heard Curtis Johnson say it a number of times as well. And when you're dealing with that, you're going to get good and you're going to get bad. And Saturday you saw bad. And this is a team that can't commit a slew of turnovers like they did on Saturday. 5 of them, 2 pick sixes. They're not good enough to overcome that. And look, you can say, oh, it was Memphis. Memphis is a pretty good football team. This is a team that they've got 2 very winnable home games left, and they're going to share the American Conference Championship this year. At worst, they might win it outright depending on how things shake out. But that's a pretty good football team there, and that's what Tulane's trying to get to. This is a team with a lot of that. That's a veteran team that was out there. A lot of fourth-year juniors, a lot of fourth-year seniors, a lot of fifth-year seniors, and as a result, you saw some of that experience shine through out there.
It was puzzling to see Tanner Lee go from being so good at Houston to making poor decisions in this game, and obviously the pick sixes were destructive for Tulane's cause in the game. And, of course, high school football continuing this weekend with the playoffs. In some phases, it's the regional round. In others, it's the quarterfinal round. Don't worry, it will confuse you immensely, as it always does. But the reality is a lot of good matchups, a lot of good games. You can follow it all at sportsnola.com. Hope you enjoyed our SportsNola.com game this past Friday night with De La Salle and Vanderbilt Catholic at Joe Brown. It was a pretty good football game. And, of course, the New Orleans Pelicans embark on their first West Coast swing of the year, a 4-game road trip, and it starts tonight against a very good Portland team, and the Pelicans are 5-3 coming off of a record-setting performance against Minnesota in which they simply couldn't miss.
Yeah, that was extraordinary. I mean, 84 points or 80 points at halftime, 80 to 44. It was crazy, the kind of numbers they were putting up. Ended up scoring the most points in franchise history. It was, just some unbelievable numbers. You had to keep going through the record books to find the next thing they had done. And who would have thought we'd be sitting here on 10 days before Thanksgiving and the Pelicans would have more wins than the Saints? Just saying, just saying. But the Pelicans, now this is tough when the hazards of playing in the Western Conference as opposed to the East is you get to make more of these West Coast trips. And this is one of them this week. Call it the Cirque du Soleil trip, if you will, because they had to get out of the building for a week. But that everybody's got to deal with that for some reason. You're going to go out there and you're going to play. You're not just going to go play one game out on the West Coast and fly back. They don't do it that way. So 4 games here. We'll see how they come back after this. But this is a stretch now, 9 out of 11 on the road. Key stretch of the season early on for them.
Certainly is. Bonding time. Try to get 2 out of the 4. That would be good. We'll see what transpires. Don't miss Sports Nola TV. Monday night, that's tonight, 6 p.m. on WHNO Channel 20. We'll break all of this down, and I know you'll enjoy seeing it. So that's our First NBC Bank Weekend Preview brought to you by First NBC Bank with 32 locations throughout the greater New Orleans area and beyond. That's First NBC Bank, proud sponsor of SportsNola.com. Lenny, a pleasure. We'll have a good week here.
All right. See you later this week.
All right. For Lenny, I'm Kenny. Thanks for joining us, and God bless you.